when you speak. Okay, then this is your volume. Yeah. So
Hello, Emma. This is the UN technician here in New York.
Okay, hi.
We're on. Do you have any questions? Hello, Mr. Killia. Mr. Calillo, this is the UN tech.
So that's on.
Sorry, is it too much to ask you for a copy of the statement of the USG?
Good, good morning. Um, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's 5 minutes after 10, so we are going to start. Thank you all for being here. Those of you with us here in New York in the room, as well as those following us online through social media. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. My name is Rad Ratuvnariv. I am a Senior Program Management Officer with the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, and with my colleague Kyo Lebogile, Lebogang Disway, we are supporting the Special Advisor in coordinating the Africa's Youth Voices program. We have a full schedule in front of us, and we are very happy that you are able to join us for this open conversation with young people from Africa, including those established on the continent and the diaspora. We'll start with an opening remarks by the United Nations Special Advisor, Under Secretary General Cristina Duarte, and then we will hear from 3 young African ministers to help set the stage in today's event. We will have the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Madagascar. He will be followed by the Minister of Information, Communication and Technology of Namibia, and the Minister of Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry of the Seychelles will close the stage-setting segment. Then an intergenerational fireside chat will follow, which will be co-hosted by USG Cristina Duarte and the Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, Mr. Felipe Polier. We will have an excellent lineup of panelists with us. During the intergenerational fireside chat, we will have an opportunity to engage with you here on the floor as well as online. So if you are not connected on YouTube and sending us chat messages, please do so. The link is on the website of the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa. And then ASG Polier will close today's event with his remarks. And I'm very proud to hand the floor over to our moderator, who is none other than Madame Michelle Chivunga. Michelle Chivunga is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Global Policy House. She is an AFCFTA digital trade expert and a Digital Transformation Woman of the Year 2022. She's involved in the technology sector, including blockchain and artificial intelligence, as well as digital transformation. Michelle, it's such a pleasure to have you. The floor is yours.
With that introduction, I got proud.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, including those online across the world. It's such a pleasure to be here in New York. I actually arrived in New York yesterday and really excited to be here. As a fellow diaspora, just like many of you, we're very excited about the continent. So it's a real pleasure to join you, and I'm very excited about today's program. I think the team have worked extremely hard to put this together for all of you. And it's such a pleasure to have everybody in the room as well as online. So a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I will start by, humbly, introducing the Undersecretary General Special Advisor on Africa, Her Excellency Madam Christina Duarte, who I have had the pleasure of having, I think, 2 or 3 sessions with herself on various issues around digital transformation, the future growth of Africa, and I am such a fan. And I feel like I'm sitting, I'm a little bit of a fan, and I feel like I'm a bit intimidated sitting next to you, but super excited to hear about what you have to share with all the young people of Africa. I mean, for me, the young people of Africa really are the future. And you are the ones that are going to take that continent to the next levels. We're obviously looking to move beyond Agenda 2063 of the African Union and, of course, the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And on that note, I humbly, like to introduce the Undersecretary General, Her Excellency, Madame Duarte. Over to you.
Have a button? No. Good morning. What a pleasure to be here today with all of you. I have a proposal. First, let's have an open and frank conversation about youth in Africa. And in order to do that, I would like to propose, let's use our first names. I'm just Christina. And Philippe is my new colleague, and hoping down the road we'll be friends. So to break the ice, I have a couple of issues in terms of introducing, opening this launching event. The first one is that we start 3 years ago. This is not a one-time event, no. We started a process 3 years ago following a strong request by African member states. I think this is important. African member states have called on us and said, and I have here my dear sister, the ambassador, permanent representative of Eritrea. She can witness that. The African group of ambassadors based in New York called me and say, we would like to have within OSAA a strong program on youth. So we start this process, this journey 3 years ago. And the main goal of African member states was, through the implementation of this youth program, to create a space in the New York stage for youth voices. Why? Why? Why to craft a space in the New York stage for African youth voices? As simple as that. Because the New York stage is the stage where global narratives are cooked, definitely. And we all know in this room that global narratives decide allocation of resources. So it was important to create that space in the New York stage. So we started 3 years ago. We did first in 21, for the first time, we create a youth stage in the African Dialogue Series for 30 days, the month of May. My office organized Africa Dialogue Series, which means for 30 days, Africa occupies the space of New York stage. And in that program, in that flagship product, we create a dedicated 4 days to young Africans. And they have been taking the floor and saying, believe me, saying it all. Then we move in 23 to the youth voices. From the youth stage within the Africa Dialogue Series, we move to the youth voices. Last year, 23, September, SDG Summit, what we did, for the whole month of December, we took 1 day a week, and we organized a conversation around the SDGs, why Africa is not delivering in the SDGs, what are the root causes, and was not a conversation about youth issues. Was a conversation about African issues with youth voices, which is different. Giving the opportunity of the youth voices, African youth voices, to take a part of the development of Africa's conversation. And what is the conceptual framework behind the youth stages, the youth voice, and today, the youth network? They are linked. And behind all these 3 steps, there is the same conceptual framework. And the same conceptual framework, if you allow me, is in the title of this event. Is in the title. And allow me to read the title. I love the title, by the way. The title says, Building Tomorrow's Leaders Today. Building tomorrow's leaders today. Fostering youth ownership for Africa's future-ready leadership. I never saw such small sentence with such huge content. We talk about ownership. You talk about leadership, so in Africa. And the title brings, I believe, the main issue, the main challenge in Africa, ownership. This is, at the end, if you squeeze the lemon, this is the root problem of Africa. It's not let's say, an equal trade of agreements. It's not illicit financial flows. These are the tip of the iceberg. But if you dive, the root cause of these tip of iceberg problems are a question of ownership. Why? And I would like to bring to this conversation to link ownership with the financing paradox. After Africa has been captured in the past 50 years, have been captured by a financing paradox. Rich in financial resources, I'm not saying natural everybody knows. Rich in financial resources, as we speak today, Africa already finances more than 75%. Allow me to repeat this number. More than 75% of its own development. It's not ODA. It's not FDI. Are African resources financing more than 75% of Africa's development. The question is, why Africa, despite being rich in financial resources, is in debt distress? Africa loses, on average, annually, $500 billion a year. If our continent loses $500 billion a year, it's because our continent has been able to generate that. I cannot lose my iPhone if I don't have an iPhone. Maybe artificial intelligence will take care of that. But not now, not now. I can lose my iPhone if I have my iPhone before. So if Africa loses 500 billion, it's because Africa has been able to generate. But Africa has been unable to grab, to mobilize. What is the missing piece? Institutions, country systems. Why? because we still not addressing the question of ownership and control of economic and financial flows. So when discussing building tomorrow's leaders today, I do believe that you as future leaders, you need to be aware. You need to, in my opinion, allow me, this is an open and frank conversation. You need to be aware, you need to be aware that to be the tomorrow's leader that Africa needs, the Africa we want, you need to be aware that this ownership deficit needs to be addressed. Needs to be addressed. Otherwise, will be not possible to generate Africa's future-ready, let's say, leadership. And I do believe that today, young people need to be aware of this challenge, of ownership challenge, to be ready to exercise down the road a strong leadership that address the root problem, for example, of our financing paradox. And these are my introductory conversation. So a call to you as future young leaders to be aware today what are the challenges, the root causes to be addressed, so you emerge as strong and different leaders. Back to you, my dear.
Thank you so much. Wow, very, very powerful, enlightening words. And certainly 100% agree with that ownership deficit. I think we can address the ownership deficit. We're addressing a number of areas that Madame Duan talked about. I will just head on straight to introduce our ministerial delegation that is, kindly have joined us today. Very, very exciting to have the young ministers who are here to also speak to you, all of you young people, and also to really kind of tell us a little bit about what is happening in their countries. So I'll start by the introduction with all the ministers, and then we'll go in that order in terms of the presentations from the ministers. First and foremost, really excellent to have His Excellency Mr. Fontaine, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Madagascar. Second, we also have Her Excellency Ms. Emma Theophilus, Minister of Information, Communication and Technology of Namibia. And finally, but certainly not least, we have Her Excellency Ms. Vidot, Minister of Investment, Entrepreneurship and Industry of the Seychelles. And in that order, I think we will start with His Excellency Fontaine's video. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, fellow youth leaders and friends, allow me to start with a word of appreciation to the United Nations for hosting this event dedicated to an issue that is very dear to my heart, the role of young people in accelerating progress toward a more sustainable world. Not long ago, I vividly recall being on the other side, participating in multilateral forum hosted by the United Nations and other international organizations as a representative of young people from my country, Madagascar, and my continent, Africa. Then and now, I remain steadfast in my conviction that young people can change the world and that young people will change the world. Transposing that belief to our beloved continent, I am firmly convinced that young people can transform Africa and that young people will transform Africa. Some of this transformation is, in fact, already unfolding before our eyes, fueled by the passion, energy, creativity, and conviction of young Africans who have decided the time to act is now. Not tomorrow, not next month, not next year, not in 2030, not in 2063, now. I know a thing or two about this burning desire, as it has inspired my decision to return home to Madagascar after completing my studies abroad, to take an active part in the development of agriculture and land restoration in Madagascar. I became the founder and manager of Bond, an innovative social enterprise of agricultural reforestation and rural development projects in Madagascar. In this role, I led a team that delivered tangible results, contributing to environment preservation and impacting the lives and livelihoods of several communities across our island nation. When the call came to serve my country as its next Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, the same passion for change by leveraging the power of youth drove my answer. I now have the privilege of leading the implementation of strategic initiatives to preserve our country's environment and boost its sustainable development. I draw inspiration from youth leaders and leverage every opportunity to put young people at the center of policymaking across the portfolio I lead. This is extremely important in a country such as Madagascar, where half of the population is under the age of 18 and 43% under 15. Also, 15% of the population is aged under 5. Can you imagine the issue and also the opportunity that it represents for us? The approach is also totally aligned with the priority of His Excellency Mr. Andradzwil, President of the Republic of Madagascar, to put young people at the heart of the work of our government. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, fellow youth leaders, and friends, I am sharing this personal experience to add my voice to this event as a young African, but also to highlight the importance of multilateral support for networks such as Africa's Youth Voices. As a former UNICEF climate advocate, I know firsthand the convening power of the United Nations and the support and access it provides to the global stage. Young Africans need the support of the international community to sustain and expand the transformation they are starting across Africa to accelerate the continent's development. With preparations underway for a once-in-a-generation Summit of the Future to establish an international system that responds to the needs of our time, let us provide this support. I am full of hope that we are creating an opportunity to leverage the summit to maximize the participation of young Africans in shaping policies impacting their future. Africa's youth have earned the right to be at the table of the leadership decision and deserve our support now to achieve their goals and aspirations. Not tomorrow, not next month, not next year, not in 2030, not in 2063. Now, I wish our hosts today and all the young participants who are joining us live in person in New York or online around the world much success with this launch event and ultimately the long-term success of Africa's Youth Voices in advancing Africa's youth's agenda. As we say in my country, to wish you a successful journey, Swavadi.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we'll move on to the next minister who's online. Okay.
Thank you so much, moderator. I'm very happy to join today's launch, one that will see that young Africans would have a representation of voice in New York as a launching pad to more engagement with the multilateral system. My name is Emma Theophilis. I am the Minister of Information Communication Technology from the Republic of Namibia. And I'm very happy to join you this afternoon from Windhoek as we discuss this very important launch and, more importantly, how we can support the work of the UN. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Under-Secretary General for initiating this very, very important initiative, one that promises to ensure that young Africans would have a network that will allow them to participate with their voices that do not always come through many of the decisions at international fora. But first, I'd like to talk about the uncertainties and uncertain times we face as an African continent. One, we're looking at the situation of coups and unrest on the African continent, because if we're talking about African youth voices, we should also talk about young people who live in conflict areas. Not only countries like Namibia, which have been quite peaceful, but young people that would not necessarily have representation or voice to reach forums such as this or discussion rooms such as the ones we're having. There is, for example, a very, very silent genocide that's happening in DRC, where we have seen many millions of people having to leave their areas that they've lived in for years because of the new resource around cobalt and the opportunities of technology. As a technology minister myself, I'm very aware of Africa's position in terms of actually giving that resource for a technologically needed world that wants to develop. But many a times, the African continent continues to be one that is burdened with, corporations, multi-corporations that would like to mine cobalt and any other technological efficient materials and therefore displace our people. Then we also have the forgotten conflict and situation in Sudan. The young people there would also need a voice. And that's a serious matter. We yes see that there are many multiple conflicts happening around the world, but we continue to see that conflict of people with melanin are concerned, many times are not in the mainstream media and become forgotten. The issue of Sudan is an urgent one. And as a young leader on the continent, there is no way I will not raise my voice to look at how we can collectively bring to the fore in mainstream media through our platforms the issue of the young people in the conflict in Sudan. I think this whole situation reminds me of the creeping normality concept because we're continuously seeing that when conflicts are on the African continent, perhaps there is a creeping normality that it is expected that there should be conflict in Africa, that there should be this and that. But that should not be the normality. That should not be the case. The issues of Africa and where young people on the continent continue to suffer needs to have mainstream audience all over the world. And of course, voices are important. The voices of young people are important. I myself, for a very long time, was a youth advocate in the Republic of Namibia, on the continent, and even across the borders of the continent. I was appointed deputy minister at the age of 23. I'm 28 now, and I was recently appointed as Minister of ICT. The voices of young people mean nothing until young people on the African continent actually hold positions of leadership. Therefore, I do not believe we are preparing the leaders of today for tomorrow. The leaders of today are ready. Young people like me are ready to lead ministries where technology is concerned, ministries where young people's issues are concerned, ministries and departments where industrialization and trade is discussed, where the Africa Free Trade Continental Area is an issue of discussion. Young people need to take the lead. And that can only happen, of course, yes, through dialogue and voices, but when we take positions of leadership, it means nothing when we do not have the platforms to actually transition our voices into action, action that Africa desperately needs. I think because of the continent's history, and I know many people would say, the history is only one part. What you do today matters. But unfortunately, the legacies of colonialism, oppression, continue to stay alive on the continent. And that is why I think in many instances, we continuously see that Africa is not treated the same in terms of continental representation. Africa still has no seat on the United Nations Security Council. We have no representative voice, permanent voice, considering one, we are one of the largest continents in the world. We have a youth populace that continuously gets younger year after year. We are the youngest continent today. We'll be the youngest continent in the next 20, 30 years. We are literally the dividend, the potential dividend that can change the fortunes of the world around. Yet we do not have a seat on the United Nations Security Council. But moreover, we continue to see the disparities in the way financing is conditioned for African states. African countries continuously have high interest rates when they borrow from IMF or the World Bank. That continues to be a problem. It is not fair. And we're talking about young Africans that need a seat at the table, yet they continue to suffer because their countries continue to borrow at high interest rates. There needs to be an honest and serious discussion about that matter. Secondly, corruption on the continent. Africans are not corrupt only with one another. There are corruptors that also corrupt, whether it's government or business on the continent. When are we going to have conversations about the corruptors that come onto the continent and corrupt our systems, institutions, and processes? But we know the challenges. We see the gaps. We have the data. Financing is available, and I'm very happy that the Undersecretary General indicated that the financing is truly available. It is there. What continues to be a challenge is leadership that needs to take hold. We continuously need leaders that will take the hard decisions for the African continent to move away from its current situation, and for the young people on this continent to stop being frustrated, because there is a sense of frustration in the way things are going. So yes, we have a wounded leadership, but the leadership needs to step up to challenge some of these issues. So finally, what are the opportunities? The Summit of the Future, as you know, is co-hosted between Germany and Namibia, and we continuously, take the forefront to ensure that the Summit of the Future truly reflects the aspiration of the young African continent. But moreover, we continuously see that the African continent continues to be younger, whether it's the strength in our voices or the strength in the work that we do in our civil society organizations, or some of us have been able to channel through government, and we are still not many. There's still need for more young people to join positions of leadership, but all that work is an opportunity for us to change the fortunes of Africa. So one, I would like to congratulate the Undersecretary General and the UN for coming up with this very important network. There are so many networks all across the world, on the African continent, for young African voices. This network needs to stand out. This network needs to discuss the issues that matter for Africa to really turn around and not follow the discussions to be politically correct or be cosmetic. And I believe this network will be the game changer in ensuring that African voices are able to take center stage. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much. Very, very powerful. I will come back with a summary after all the ministers have spoken, so we will move on to the next minister. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you warm greetings from sunny Seychelles. It gives me great pleasure to address you today. I would like to start by firstly thanking the organizers for giving me the opportunity to say a few words at this very important forum. I was called into office at the young age of 31, heavily pregnant with my second child, whilst my first had not even turned 2. The people had voted for change. Seychelles had elected a new president, a new administration, and the people had set high expectations for us. Very high expectations. Appointing a young female minister did not seem like a wise choice to me. Not only was I pregnant with no prior experience in politics, but I had just started my family. For many days, I found myself wrestling with self-doubt and questioned whether I had made the right choice in accepting the role. However, as the days unraveled, I embraced the challenges and instead saw these as opportunities that would allow me to make a real difference for my country. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings me immense satisfaction. I thank the President for instilling his trust in me. I share this very personal story with you because we often think that we are too young or inexperienced to achieve the big things in life. The youth are often marginalized as we are regarded as being frivolous, impulsive, risk takers, and always focused on having fun. Many view these traits as complications, and as a result, very often we're not taken seriously. Over time, the perception on youth has affected how we in turn view ourselves. But I think that it is time to change this perception. I personally consider the inherent traits of being a young adult as being the best ingredients in the formula to success. In my role as minister responsible for business, I have the opportunity to work alongside many young people, especially entrepreneurs. Their creativity, their zeal is invigorating, and it is such a joy to be a part of their inspirational journey. Ladies and gentlemen, entrepreneurship is about finding innovative solutions to challenges and overcoming hurdles and getting rich whilst doing it. Successful entrepreneurs have known failure and have risen above failure. Gradually, I have learned that the success of entrepreneurs also lies within the culture and the environment in which they operate. Research indicates that the cost of failure is high in countries with a high standard of living because getting back to the basics of life is too painful. As proud Africans, we are born survivors. Our culture nurtures us and teaches us to be fighters, to be proud of our achievements, but never too proud to fail. In drawing upon these inspirational qualities, my ministry has embarked on a program to build a generation of entrepreneurs. We believe that the characteristics of entrepreneurs are perfect to be inculcated in the younger generation. The aim is not to just build a generation of pioneers in business and create wealth, but also an army of responsible citizens. The program has been devised to target school children from an early age and instill in them attributes that will enhance their creative thinking, their problem solving, and communication skills. And let us not forget that the technological advancements of today offer us an opportunity to leapfrog into the future in terms of development and socio-economic growth. Entrepreneurship offers us the right vessel to harness the opportunities that science, technology, and innovation presents to us. Ladies and gentlemen, for years, we have allowed ourselves to follow in the footsteps of others, and our development being dependent on what is happening in other continents, as if we do not have the resources to influence and be a trendsetter. And the reality is that our continent is rich with an abundance of the finest natural resources and equipped with the human capital needed for the next phase of global development, which means that at some point, all the intelligence, creative skills, and energy will be residing in our continent. It is therefore my firm belief that Africa has the potential to change the world. We have it all: the right demographics, the right environment, the right culture, and all the resources. All we have to do is to start creating opportunities for ourselves. When are we going to make use of the resources that are at our disposal and generate the wealth that we deserve? Africa, when are we going to wake up and be the leading continent of the world? We can do this. I thank you for your attention.
Wow, thank you so much. Extremely powerful contributions from all the ministers. Before I go on to the next segment, I will quickly just highlight to all of you, especially all you young people, because I was so excited by the presentations. I can't help myself. I'm going to just quickly summarize and then go to the next segment. The Right Honorable from Madagascar talked to us about the importance of leveraging our passion as young people. Very, very important that we tap into that passion and actually start to create opportunities for ourselves. And of course, he also highlighted that the time is absolutely now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, not in the future, now. The time is now for the African youth to actually step up, take those leadership positions, and lead so that we can benefit and generate that Africa we want. And certainly he also went into a little bit detail around the critical sectors that we also need to think about. Agriculture is sexy. Yes, I am in tech, but I think agriculture is sexier, because agriculture is going to provide us with the resources that we need to grow as a continent. So young people, please, please, I plead to you as a fellow entrepreneur that do look at other sectors. You know, it's not all about tech, but it's also about looking at the critical sectors to grow our economies. Right, Honorable Minister talked about that very, very strongly. Quickly going into the Honorable Minister in Namibia, it really, really touched my heart when she talked about the importance of voices from, you know, young people in conflict areas. We often forget that we actually have, you know, countries where we're not all in stable conditions. I think it's very, very important we hear the voices from the young people who are in the conflict zones. You know, the world is going through turmoil, not just in Africa, but the world is going through turmoil, and it's important we hear the voices of our young people who are also in the conflict zones, because they sometimes have these solutions. Also very important, the Honorable Minister talked about, you know, the transition to action. So let's not keep talking and talking and talking about things. Let's actually act and start to do things. And I really believe, just like the Minister highlighted, that it's up to the young people to actually act and deliver some of these solutions. But also it's very, very important at global level that we have, she talked about, you know, African voices at global level, you know, African voices on being on the table. We are here on the table today, young people. I think you should celebrate that, and we must, you know, commend the Under Secretary General and her team for putting this together and making sure that we are at the table and that we are being heard. I think very, very important. And certainly also she talked about the importance of leadership, tackling corruption, and also not making norms of their crippling normalities, right? I think that point is very, very important. Let's not make things that are detrimental to the continent a norm, right? Things like corruption, let's start to tackle that and handle that. And corruption does not reside just in Africa, believe you me, right? But we have to handle our own business and make sure that we are tackling the things that are crippling us as a continent. And finally, but certainly not least, you know, very, very passionate address from the Minister, Honorable Minister from Seychelles. 100% agree with her points around how we Africans can actually lead the world. I think that came out very strongly. If we put our minds together, if young people come together, we can lead the world. I truly believe that. Even for myself as a business, I set up my business with the belief that I can do it, right? Yes, I am in a very male-dominated sector, but so what? I am ready to deliver. So I really want young people to also believe that we can do it and lead the world. She talked a little bit around the importance of entrepreneurship, you know, for Africa. You know, many, many of our people, young people, you know, women across the continent are entrepreneurs. Most of our businesses, 60 to 70% of businesses in Africa are SMEs, small, medium enterprises, and entrepreneurs. So very, very fundamental that we tap into our entrepreneurial spirit and are able to deliver on the entrepreneurship. And she also talked very much around the importance of, you know, looking at the potential change that we need to look at, you know, and that we have everything that, you know, to be able to deliver the change we want around our culture, you know, the environment, the technological advancement that we're seeing, whether it's AI and whether it's Nigeria driving fintech and a number of other critical sectors. And then also never to be too proud to fail. I thought that point was very important. We fail all the time. I fail today still. In my company, I make mistakes all the time. And it's good to fail, we say in business, because it teaches you to learn and to improve. So don't be afraid to fail, and as long as we're learning. And then, of course, we are born survivors. That's what she highlighted. It's important that we're born survivors, that we're able to take on challenges. And I love the personal touch that she gave us about her story and what she went through, you know, the self-doubt, especially as women, we tend sometimes to be a little bit doubtful about our potential. We can absolutely do it. So again, to summarize, those are the main points I think the Honorable Ministers gave us, all absolutely phenomenal. And I want to thank the Honorable Ministers for their time, and hopefully we will have them in person. Later on, we heard about the summit that is coming up. You know, please do support and join that. And finally, I will now switch on to the next segment of the program, which is very much going to be the intergenerational fireside chat. And we will have, you know, the Under Secretary General again lead us in this discussion, as well as Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs from the United Nations. Very nice to have you, Mr. Polier, to come and also join in that discussion on the Fireside Chat. alongside a number of very young people, pioneers who've done some incredible work. And I will hand over to the Undersecretary General as well as the ASG to introduce the young people and jump into the fireside chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's move to the fun part of the program, the fireside chat. So this is supposed to be a conversation between me, Philippe, and four outstanding young Africans. We'd like in this fireside chat conversation, we have a couple of questions, but the spirit would be to try during this conversation, during this fireside, to bring to the table some crispy, tough issues that if we do not address now, I don't think we'll be able to tackle the challenge that the three young ministers have laid out in such, I would say, brilliant way. In my introductory remarks, as I mentioned, I brought the ownership issue, and I used the financing paradox to provide an example how the lack of ownership is a huge problem for Africa. It just produced $500 billion of losses. Allow me, in this fight chat, before giving the floor to my dear colleague Philippe, to link ownership to something that is critical. To exercise ownership, we need to grab education. Education is not charity. Education has become the tool in the 21st century. What I mean by education, I'm not talking not only about universal basic education, because this is a past challenge that we have not addressed, because you are supposed to address basic education 20 years ago, during the Millennium Development Goals, and you have not done so. But now we are in a situation that not only we need to deliver the homework that we have not done for internal and external factors, but at the same time to embrace the 21st century challenges, which means getting not one, two, thousands and thousands of young Africans become experts on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. Without STEM being one of the main drivers in training Africans, will not get there. Most of the countries are already moving into artificial intelligence. We cannot only be focused on making universal education. I'm sorry. We have not delivered 20 years ago. Now we need to deliver what we have delivered, and at the same time grab the 21st century. We need to have elasticity in our mindset, to be able to put into motion at the same time different work streams. Those work streams to address past challenge that we have not done. So, I'm sorry, but we need to do. But at the same time, the same mindset needs to be ready for what? For artificial intelligence. And I do believe that let's have this conversation, because without education and without approaching education as the tool to grab the future, we'll not get there. With these words, I would like to give the floor to my dear colleague, Philippe. Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning to everyone. I'm very happy, and it's a pleasure to join this event today. And thank you, Christina, especially to you and your team, Rado, that is also joining us at the beginning of the conversation, for inviting our office to be part. And we hope that this is just the first step in a cooperation we want to extend because of the critical and important role the African region has for the youth agenda. So very briefly, I want to present myself in an informal way. My name is Felipe, and I'm the United Nations Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, which means that I have the responsibility to lead a newly created office created by the United Nations to advance and move forward on the prioritization of youth issues across this system. I lead an office that recently become operational just a few months ago. I came on board the 1st of December 2023 from my home country, which is a lot of kilometers from here in the Latin America region, a small country called Uruguay. But this office builds on a decade-long work of the previous envoys on youth, both Ahmad and Jayatma, that did an amazing job in their own capacity and the team capacity. I wanted to point this because just to mention that the United Nations in the past years has been accelerating its efforts to bring young people closer to the United Nations. And that's why in 2022, the United Nations General Assembly established the United Nations Youth Office. And that's a big step because this means that all the member states, all the countries of the United Nations agreed that how to bring young people closer to the decisions in this institution, in this whole system, is crucial for the years to come. Young people are experts in their own lived realities. African young people are experts in what is happening and what needs the African region, and are experts in how to bring this experience into the global discussions. So consulting and meaningfully engage with young people is critical if we want to address effectively the issues of this world. And meaningfully engage with young people is critical if we want to create and to build trust between institutions and young people. So for me, it's a pleasure to be here to have this conversation. And I think that we should pass to the important, which is to hear about the experiences of 4 young leaders from the region. I think that two of them are joining us here in present. 2 of them are joining virtually. I hope that Ahmed make it. Yes, great, because I think that at the beginning there was some issues with the connection. But I don't know, Christina, if you want, maybe we can pass the mic to our guests so they can, and panelists, so they can introduce themselves. So here in the room we have Rakia and Kenneth, and virtually joining us, Jasmina and Ahmed. So I will, if it's okay, pass the mic to Rakia, and you can introduce as you want, you personally and your experience, and then Kenneth, and then the other 2 panelists online.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, USD Duarte and ASG Polier, for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here and to contribute to this important discussion. So my name is Rakia Abifara. I am a health policy and management graduate student at Columbia University. I am a co-president for the African Global Health Network at Columbia Mailman School of Public Health. I have over 4 years of experience working with the UN, specifically with youth engagement and participation with UNFPA in Uganda, and I'm really excited to be here and contribute to this. I'm originally, also I'm from Somalia. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakia. Now Kenneth.
Thank you. Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, Christina, for just being here and having us to share our thoughts and everything. And thank you, Rado and Lebo as well for just kind of organizing everything. So my name is Ken Kungani. I'm the Executive Director of the National African Student Association, originally from Kenya, based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm also an engineer pretty much in the energy sector. Our organization is basically an umbrella organization for African diaspora youth. So in multiple different universities across the US, you'll find African students, and statistics say there's about 47,000 students from the African continent that come and study here. So these are students who are either they will end up in some sort of position in power at some point because they have privilege in some form of sense. And you also have, on top of that 47,000, you also have the ones who've grown here that connect and meet each other in those universities. And then they form groups together and they discuss and they have different solutions that they feel like they can implement on the continent. But being in the diaspora is a challenge. So for us as an organization, we're there to be that source of network where we bring in partnerships, we bring in certain resources so that they can be able to transition into certain different spaces. I believe that diaspora youth have a say in some way, and appreciate you for letting me share their voice.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you also for bringing into the conversation the diaspora and how they can contribute also in this global and also in the regional platform. So now, Jasmina, if you're there, maybe we can pass the mic to you for your introduction.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Yasmina bin Sliman. I'm from Morocco. My grandfather was from Mauritania, and he came to Morocco because he really believed in a united Africa, united front. So I have my passion for Pan-Africanism from him. I am currently based in Puerto Rico in the Caribbean, and I am the founder of Politics for Her, which is an organization that advocates for the inclusive and meaningful participation of young women and girls in politics, leadership, and decision-making processes. And of course, we have Africa Hub, where we focus on African issues. I'm really glad to be here today, and I'm very honored to be part of the launch of the Africa Youth Voices Network. I believe that it's absolutely crucial to have a space for African youth voices, as throughout my years of engagement within the UN, I have seen how African youth have been dismissed, tokenized, excluded because of visa processes, because of funding issues. So I really want us to also reflect on how privileged we are for being here today and leave no one behind truly, and think about specifically Sudan. Today marks 1 year since the conflict erupted in Sudan. I look really forward to engaging in a meaningful conversation with all of you where we make sure that no one is left behind. Thank you for having me.
Last but not least, Ahmed.
Thank you so much. My name is Ahmed Benin Wisicho. I'm Secretary General to the Pan-African Youth Union. And just maybe a brief on the Pan-African Youth Union. The Pan-African Youth Union is the continental coordinating mechanism for national youth councils and equivalent national coordinating mechanisms on the continent. Founded in 1962 by a decision of African heads of states and validated by the Conference of Ministers in 2006, 2014, and 2011. Our core mandate is to coordinate these national coordinating mechanisms. And as you may know, it is the African continent is about the only continent that's got a charter that's a continental blueprint harmonizing youth mainstreaming. And Article 12 of that charter, signed and adopted by all African member states, mandates the countries to set up what we call the national coordinating mechanisms. And these national coordinating mechanisms have different nomenclatures: national youth councils, national youth commissions, national youth authorities, and national youth agencies. And our responsibility is to coordinate all these national coordinating mechanisms to be able to harmonize youth work across the continent. The headquarters is currently hosted by the government of the Kingdom of Morocco in Rabat, and we are truly pleased to be here. But just maybe before I land, let me seize this opportunity to congratulate Under Secretary General, Her Excellency, Madame Duarte. She's been very supportive of the work that we do on the continent. I also want to welcome Assistant Secretary General to the ecosystem. The young people of Africa are looking forward to working with you. We look forward to understanding your broader vision on how you harmonize and integrate this national coordinating mechanism into the broader UN framework. I thank you.
I will pass the floor to Cristina so she can start with the dialogue.
Thank you, Philip. So I will start. This conversation, and I'll be raising a question. Again, being a Minister of Finance for 10 years, I'm completely biased. My apologies. I'm completely biased. So I ask for your understanding. And my question is again around our financing for development challenge. And I would like to have this, to launch this question, to address this question to, I believe it's to Ken, correct? Ahmed. Ahmed? Is still there?
Yes, yes.
Ahmed, you still there?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
So are you ready for my question, Ahmed?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Ready to engage.
Yes. We have been in our office, in OSAA's office, let's say, we have been advocating the need to shift the paradigm of financing for development in Africa. I think it's clear to everybody that the business model of financing for development in Africa that prevailed in the past 30 years, with all my due respect, is broken. Everybody knows. So I'm not being any rocket science saying it. I'm just repeating. And it's broken due to external factors. And the Secretary General has been very clear on that, has been calling to, first has been saying very loudly how unfair is the international financial architecture towards Africa, how unfair is the international trade system towards Africa. And the Secretary General has been calling in a strong way the need to change this. We at OSAA, we try to complement the Secretary General's message, bold narrative, with the other side of the coin. The shift of the financing for development in Africa comes not only from addressing the unfairness of the international systems, finance, trade, you name it, but also we need to start yesterday, not today, yesterday, a country-level process where we all acknowledge the need to put domestic resource mobilization in the driver's seat. And I go back what I said at the beginning, Ahmed and Philippe. We cannot, I heard that, Ken, in your introduction you said that you are engineering on energy, correct?
Yes.
Did I listen?
Yes,
Oh, thank you. This is the perfect situation. Let's take the energy sector, and I'll be very brief. We are a dark continent. Almost 600 million people without access to electricity, and on average between 15 and 18 million young people joins the labor market. But at the same time, this continent that is in a dark situation, where 600 million people do not access electricity, the same continent has, you name it, and I tell you that we have it. We have all energy sources. How come? What is, again, this is the second paradox. In my introductory remarks, I mentioned the financing paradox, and this is the energy paradox. I'd like to ask Ahmed, what do you think about the energy paradox? That basically what is preventing us to address the energy paradox is the fact that we have been unable to mobilize finance to invest in the energy sector, and link that to the fact that we do not control our flows. We have not put domestic resource mobilization in the driver's seat. And for a couple of reasons, including what my dear sister, the minister from Namibia, mentioned in terms of historical reasons, we still have a mindset completely occupied by ODA. I would like, Ahmed, to, if you could jump and just say your say on this issue.
Right. Thank you, Under Secretary General.
Christina, no, my name here is Christina, sorry. Christina, yes.
Right. Thank you, Christina, for that question. But I think that you, in your introductory remarks, you pointed out the real challenges that we are confronted with as a continent, and we need to call a spade a spade. The current financial architecture, global financial architecture, is so anti-South, anti-African in every respect of it. So much so that the continent that possesses the most natural resources goes in the global financial market and cannot even borrow. And people come from other regions, lease our resources, and they go into the global financial market and they borrow at much lower rates. That's one of the issues that needs to be addressed. Now, talk about the issues of energy. And it comes back to the global financing regimes that we speak about. For instance, you have a situation whereby a government is in crisis, and the government goes into the financial system for support. And the financial system out there will tell you what they think you should do as a government. So they give you the money and tell you where to put the money. So if I, as a government, need money to develop, and then you give me money and tell me that use that money to construct a road that leads to an export of raw material center, either than creating sustainable financing for SMEs. It's as good as not funding the country or the said government. So the first thing that we have as a huge challenge is the anti-African, anti-Afrocentric approach to international development financing on the continent. Second is the issue of how the multilateral system approaches development when it comes to Africa and the global South. I think that, and as you indicated earlier, there's a very critical approach to how financing is financed, especially when it comes to issues of Africa. And it is easier for us to go to the COP, and then the global powers come and commit $100 billion per year and don't honor their part of the bargain, but still putting pressure on governments to reduce carbon emission. But if you even look at the carbon emissions, the biggest emitters are not in Africa, but Africans are being forced to take certain actions that protect the interests of conglomerates outside the continent. And so for me, I think that the first thing that we need to be looking at is a proper review of the global financial system that makes it fair, equal, and allows us to have an equitable access to financing globally. Because as it stands now, ODA has never been a solution to the energy situation in Africa. ODA has never been a solution to the issues of poverty reduction. It's never been a solution to creating the quality of life on the continent. And therefore, our requests have always been that there must be a fair and equitable way that African countries are able to access funding globally. Now, even in the usage of our natural resources, there must be, and I'm glad that the issue of global trade came into the equation, where African governments find it extremely difficult to access markets outside the continent, but the African market is a free-for-all. That is having a fair global trade system allows us to be able to generate sufficient funding for our development, of which energy is inclusive. Because you cannot have a continent that has the natural resources, the cobalt, the gold, the diamond, the timber, the water resources, and the biggest beneficiaries of these natural resources are non-African countries on the basis of an unfair and segregational approach to global development. And so the entire multilateral system will need to be addressed. There must be a fair basis where all countries, all continents are fair beneficiaries of the dividends of globalization. It cannot be right that the dividends of globalization are concentrated in the global north, and every other thing about us is wrong, and everything about the global north is right. The third issue that I would want to touch on in terms of how do we mobilize financing. Look, Christian, you look at the way the credit agencies behave. Bigger countries have weaponized credit agencies, so much so that when there's an African country that begins to stand up for itself, they downgrade you so you cannot access financing. That is financial terrorism. And the UN and other agencies are supposed to stand up for this unjust, unfair treatment of countries that are ready and willing to stand up for their rights and be able to take actions that is reflective of the aspirations of their citizens. Our African countries are not supposed to drive our development on the basis of the aspirations of non-African countries. And so when we are talking about financing, the financing of our development should be anchored on our ability to exploit our natural resources without interference. And for the multilateral system to be fair and just enough to protect the owners of these natural resources on how we exploit them. And so I am confident that once the multilateral system is able to zero down on creating a fair, just system that guarantees our governments and our citizens being able to utilize our natural resources without the fear of the bigger countries weaponizing global systems against us, then we will be able to mobilize sufficient resources to fund our development in accordance with our aspiration. I want to conclude here. Every time that we talk about financing Africa, the first narrative that comes out is corruption. There's no African country that's as corrupt as European and American systems, because the only difference is that we have different names for corruption. We call the name corruption differently depending on where you are coming from. We live in a continent where big companies in global north would come and compromise governments, and it's seen as lobbying. And when African companies do the same, they call it corruption and bribery. Now, there must be standards. There must be one principle that governs how we mobilize financing and how we treat each other. And so, Christian, the entire conversation around development financing on this continent shouldn't be anchored on pittance offered to us in ODA or other aid regimes. It must be based on our counterparts supporting the advocacy for a more fair and egalitarian approach to mobilizing and utilization of resources. Just maybe before I conclude and allow the next speaker to come on, I think that we have the multilateral system over the years have allowed financing to be more politicized than to focus on the welfare, the quality of life, and sustainability of citizens in other parts of the world. And even when we have rolled out 17 SDGs, we cannot meet those targets because they are the biggest undermining factor for achieving these targets are not Africans. There are systems that are outside the African continent that undermines our efforts toward achieving these targets. And who are the drivers and movers of these undermining factors? They do not sit in Nigeria or in Ghana, neither do they sit in Cape Verde or in Morocco. They sit in Washington, they sit in London, they sit in Paris, and in other places. And so the UN itself must be in a position to converge, to find convergence in how the global community addresses the issues of inequality, poverty, exclusion, and marginalization within the global financial system. And I'm sure that once we address this, the African continent will be in a best position to mobilize sufficient resources to support our development and even support the global north. And on this basis, I want to thank you again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Now, and I'm trying to manage the time, I would like to ask if any other panelists would like to jump very quickly before passing the floor to my dear colleague, Philip, on this issue. Philip, your crispy question.
No. Mine is open, and I think my question, it's open to the four of the panelists to answer and to give some remarks and comments. So I would like to hear from you about what are your opinions of the role of young Africans on the continent and in the diaspora to scale up youth-led innovations and entrepreneurship. So open to the four of you, and the one that wants to start. Who wants to break the ice?
Yeah, I can start.
Go ahead, Rakia.
I'm happy to start. Thank you for the question, Felipe. So I feel like on the continent, young Africans know the context, the local context. They know the challenges. They know the opportunities that are available for innovations for social change. In the diaspora, we have the opportunity to bring different networks, different skills, and different ways that we can address these issues together. We can provide the investment, we can provide the remittances. There's a lot of areas of collaboration. So having this platform is a great start for us to connect and be working together collectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakia. And now, Kenneth.
Thank you. So in terms of innovation, I think there's, like Rakia said, just using the diaspora perspective, we are in so many different universities where there's so many resources for us to learn and continue to grow in our fields. Even for the young diaspora professionals, or I guess whatever part of your career you are in, whichever field you're in, there's a lot of resources in whichever company you're working in. Not saying that you take your company's resources and use it for Africa's development, but your mind has been sharpened, and it's now on you to kind of step out of that and not leave your company per se, but find ways to connect and be in a network, especially like, let's say, the African Youth Network, where we can talk to each other from different companies. Like, let's say for myself, even if I'm in a network with people from competing companies, we can sit together with a focus on Africa. How can we leverage what we've learned outside in all these different universities, all these different companies, to develop something that actually works? And I champion the African diaspora youth because, let's say you take a university like NYU, because I know that NYU students are here. They are in a community where you have a Nigerian, you have a Ghanaian, you have a Senegalese, you have a Moroccan, Seychelles, like you have people from so many different countries that they have the same kind of potential struggles, even though the solutions might need a little bit of twisting to work for different countries, but they're sharing their knowledge with each other. They're sharing how they struggled. Some of these people come here either through immigration, the school system, or some are refugees, some just born here, but they discuss the right things, and they're able to pretty much come up with different solutions. The problem is that those solutions are not amplified. We need to find a way to amplify those solutions. There are a lot of universities that do conferences that are focused on Africa, but I don't think a lot of those solutions end up in places where they've developed the knowledge, but then they don't have the power to create the change. So we appreciate being put in this network for sure, and we hope that this network can be a really driver for that innovation and change.
Thank you, Kenneth. Maybe Jasmina, you want to join the dialogue?
Yes, absolutely. So I am someone who strongly believes in the power of digital technologies for real life and positive change. And we've seen it in North Africa, for example, with the Arab uprising, referred to as the Revolution of Dignity, more commonly known in the West as the Arab Spring. But we saw how young people were able to mobilize within the digital space in order to bring real life change. I strongly believe in the power that young people, and particularly young feminists, also have that ability to connect meaningfully online and bring real life change. However, there are so many challenges that we must acknowledge if we really want to bring innovative change within the African continent. So firstly, there's a huge digital divide. We are all here present today, including myself, able to join online from the comfort of my home. This is not something that millions of young Africans have access to. When data is extremely expensive, when there are not the right infrastructures, there's a difference between having access to internet, but also being meaningfully digitally connected. So this is something that we need to work on digital literacy as well. Because I strongly believe that young people are already innovative. They are already the leaders of today, not of tomorrow. They already come up with brilliant ideas, but this does not come with the funding. This does not come with the resources. This does not come with what is truly needed for them to thrive. And recently I made a post on LinkedIn because of my frustration from seeing so many young people saying that they were invited in at the ECOSOC Youth Forum, but they couldn't attend because of visa restrictions, because of lack of funding. And this is something also extremely common within the feminist space. There's only 0.3% of ODA that goes towards ending violence against women and girls. This is something that was mentioned before, is the current our financial architecture system is extremely neo-colonial. So we also need to cut our colonial ties, because as it was mentioned, we're the richest continent in terms of resources. Look what's happening in Congo with the silent genocide that is being used to fuel our smartphones, to fuel our technology at the expense of the lives of millions of young women and girls and children as well. And there's still a huge divide when it comes to having access to education. There's over 38 million young people that are out of school in Africa, and 18 million of them are girls. So we're seeing a lot of issues that are all interconnected. And if we really want to break ties from the colonial ties, from patriarchy and all of those systems of oppression, then we need to come together and have a Pan-African model, because even when traveling within the African continent, it's extremely hard. I don't understand why is it so hard for us to just travel within our continent. How can we advocate for meaningful change if we do not come together, if we don't drop the visas within the continent? I saw an April Fool joke that there was going to be the launch of an African Union passport that would allow us to move freely into the continent. And I thought that that would be a brilliant idea. Why, if the EU can do it, we can do it too. So there's definitely a lot of issues that we need to face in order to really invest in innovation. Before that, I believe that there are huge barriers that don't allow young people within the continent to meaningfully engage. And it starts also with networks like this one. How can we make sure that when we establish this network, we are not going to leave no one behind, that we're going to have an intersectional perspective where everyone is included? Because again, for local solutions, we need local involvement. We need grassroots communities. We need young people who are at the forefront of change, young people who are leading all social justice movements. When we think about that, when we think about social justice movements within these past years, including the climate justice movement, it's very often young people lead those movements. So I think that's, young people are already driving change, but what is needed for them is the resources and the investment, and not just financial, but also within capacity building, within making sure that their voices are included, that we don't speak on behalf of everyone, but that we include them within our processes.
To Jasmina for your intervention. And finally, Ahmed, you want to also add anything on this specific question?
Yes. So, Felipe, I'm excited that you asked the question, and this is one of the first tasks that we want to work with you on. And why is that important? The issue of Africa is not the lack of innovative ideas or the lack of capacity for African young people to be entrepreneurial. The real issue is about the bottlenecks that are in place, and the bottlenecks start from the global stage to the local level, the lowest level of our structure, and those have to be addressed. It is very easy for the IMF and the World Bank and the other multilateral system to fund a reform in our educational system to include a particular sex education in our curricula, either than funding VTI training as an amendment to our curriculum. That, for me, defines what the interests of the entire world is relative to the well-being and welfare of Africa and the global South. And these are issues that we address. The second issue that I think that it will be extremely important if we are talking about scaling up is it all boils down to financing and the ideal climate for these entrepreneurs to operate. And financing, the buzz stops with the ability of our countries and our continent to be able to mobilize sufficient financing for the banks to be able to give credit to these entrepreneurs at very low interest rates without necessarily talking about the issues of collateral. Because today, when I start a business in Ghana or in Nigeria or in South Africa and I go to the bank, the first thing that they're going to ask is about collateral for you to be able to build additional systems and be more innovative. It's going to be different if a colleague of mine in Portugal or in Spain or in France approaches a bank in any of the cities to access financing to fund their entrepreneurial venture. And this is the conversation, this is where the conversation must come to say, the systems that are in place are a little, not a little, very unfair to the African entrepreneur. And let's take the incidence of COVID, for instance. I'm sure when COVID struck, the entire world expected countries, 50% or 60% of countries to be in body bags. The young people of this continent were innovative enough. They stood up to the occasion. They took advantage of existing systems in our countries. We provided solutions at a time that the entire world had locked us out, even when it came to vaccines. We stood up, we defended our continent and our countries, and we provided solutions. And so I want this particular conversation to focus on how we revive multilateralism that is fair, that is just, that is humane, that is capable of defending our interest as a collective, not on the basis of regionalism, but on the basis of the global sustainability and the improvement of quality of life beyond the global north. That's very important. Once we begin to do that, that means that the welfare systems that guarantee the survival of entrepreneurs and businesses across board will be extended to the global south, of which Africa is inclusive. At this particular point, there's that deliberate attempt, even by the World Trade Organization, where young entrepreneurs in Europe and the Americas and in some parts of Asia are able to even produce substandard products that can find their way into our markets. But even when our young people get into agriculture, they produce, they meet all the standards. The European Union says that you cannot ship into our countries because we need additional certification, and it is very difficult for African entrepreneurs to even access those certifications because there are bottlenecks that have been put in place to undermine their survival in Europe. That is a protectionist approach. But when Africans begin to adopt the same protectionist approach to protect our entrepreneurs, they accuse the continent and they begin to put sanctions on you.
Ahmed,
and
help me with the time.
So thank you, Kristen. But we are very passionate about this, and we really hope that we'll be able to have a conversation that allows the young entrepreneur in Africa not only having access to the markets in Africa, but to have the freedom of accessing markets beyond. That would be the most innovative approach to building and scaling up businesses in Africa. I thank you.
Ahmed, this is just the beginning of our relationship. Yeah. We'll be working with, and believe also my dear colleague Philip is highly interested in working with the Pan-African Youth Union. So, Philip, if you allow me, because Lebo already told me that we start facing a time issue, so help me. I will introduce the third issue, the third question, and allow me to try to link a little bit to what has been said. Yasmin make a strong call to digital. And it's clear that if Africa does not embrace digital transformation, we'll miss the train again. It's clear for everybody. It's clear for everybody. But the issue that I'd like to bring is the question of employment and underemployment in Africa. Today's the unemployment rate in Africa is around 7.5%. When I was Minister of Finance, I never enjoyed this unemployment rate. Always 2 digits. Only once was 9.9, but was always a double digit. The first reaction is, wow, a 7% unemployment rate is quite good. No, not in the case of Africa. We need to unpack this number. We need to unpack this number. And when you have time, please read our 2023 report that is in our site about cause of conflict and how unemployment, underemployment, and the lack of decent work in Africa feeds instability in Africa. You need to link that. And when in the working on that report, and I will be very short, we realized that young people, 95% of young people in Africa has a job in the informal sector. You might say, wow, this is good. No, this is bad. That job provides most of the time less than $3.10 a day. You have a job, but you are below the poverty line. Meaning that in Africa, to be employed and to have a job doesn't mean that you are in a jumper to jump the poverty line. We might be there, you might be there forever with this $3.10. So the question that I would like to raise is, we need to create jobs and we need to create productivity jobs, decent jobs. How come? One thing that we need to address is energy. Without energy, we cannot create the millions of jobs that we need. But to do that in the 21st century, African countries need to understand they need to undertake the digital transformation. Because create jobs 30 years ago is not the same that creating jobs today for the next 30 years. Without digital transformation, it will be almost a lost case. Third, as Yasmin and Ahmed mentioned, to create the millions of jobs that Africa needs, it must come from the private sector. But that same private sector, as you mentioned, can, and I believe was Ahmed, the same private sector, African or foreign, did not find the ecosystems in place. No energy, no transportation, no infrastructure, more than that, an underdeveloped financial market. Now I'd like to link with Philip's question that you said. What is the role of young people in promoting, I would say, Philip, in grabbing entrepreneurship in Africa, within such dysfunctional ecosystems? And this is the question that I would like to ask to all the panelists before moving to your last, unless you want to to link your last question to this one, because you are late, and then open the floor to all panelists so we can move to the closing.
No, I would like to maybe to link also this question and to bring the necessity also of creating mechanisms for meaningfully engage with young people on finding the real answers to these kind of issues, no? Not only at this kind of events, but also how we connect, no? And how we create these opportunities at the national and at the regional platforms, no? Because we really believe that in the United Nations Youth Office, and I think that in this whole discussion, that meaningfully engaging with young people is a smart decision to take to address more effectively these issues that affect the most to young people, no? Such as unemployment, such as health issues, no? But the way young people, and I think you bring this also in the conversation and some of the panelists also, no? The way young people also understand these issues is different than the way older generations and policymakers do. Yes. So really to be more effective. So maybe just to close this session with the panelists with this dialogue, maybe we can bring also this perspective into the conversation.
Would like to jump in? Please.
So I think when it comes to unemployment, there needs to be a very, very radical change in the system. I think we've already been talking about the international financial systems. They're really choking our governments to, well, in a sense of they don't have the resources to create those programs themselves in some form of way. And using maybe Yasmina's comment about digitization, if I'm a youth, I'll use my brother as an example. He was starting a business there, but then it took him almost 7 months to start the business because of just the barriers of finding the right knowledge, finding how do I go about setting up the business. So even if I have the idea, I have the innovation, the hurdles to creating a business there and making it operational is so difficult for a lot of people that I think it ends up discouraging a lot of people from getting it done. So I think that's one point. Another one is like to get actual formal sector jobs, you need industries that are stable, and if, like Ahmed said, our resources are being plunged, we cannot create the industries, all right? All our resources are coming out of the continent raw and then bringing back up after it's been reproduced for consumption. We need to figure a way to kind of create our own industries there, and the youth, how we can do that, the best way right now is to amplify our voices. We need to raise our voices because that's the only way we can get power. We need to speak as one so that our voices can be heard, and then we can champion that change so that people in power can actually do something about it.
So when I'm thinking about how to foster a culture of innovation among African youth to address unemployment issues, I think about including youth and gender-sensitive budgeting policies and regulatory frameworks. So this includes having funding for grants, loans, venture capital, and other innovative financing, that are specifically targeted at young innovators and entrepreneurs with a focus on ensuring equitable access for both men and women. Because a lot of the time, women are not included in these policies and regulations, or their needs are not included. Secondly, I think that we touched on this earlier, but innovation and entrepreneurship needs to be integrated into the school curricula, ensuring that all young people, regardless of gender, have the opportunity to develop necessary skills and mindset, including AI literacy as well, and digital literacy, as mentioned earlier. So we need to create a more supportive and youth-friendly ecosystem that facilitates collaboration and knowledge among youth entrepreneurs, industry experts, investors, policymakers. This can be through the use of incubators and accelerators and innovation hubs that are already existing. So tapping into this and providing them with access into the market is a great opportunity, and with the mentorship as well. So when we were talking about ownership earlier, I thought it was important to also mention the importance of strengthening intellectual property rights. So these protection laws and regulations are important for young people, especially that are starting off with these new business ideas, to ensure that their rights are protected. And especially for women, you know, the registration process, sometimes it's very difficult and it's very expensive. So this prevents people from even entering into this space. So we need to make sure that it's very streamlined and easier to access this information. For e-health in particular, when young people are trying to develop these innovations, and for social innovations, it should be easier. They need to know about the IRB process. They need to know about all these other barriers that make it difficult for them to, you know, move from the ideation to scale up. So yeah, I think having this mindset will, you know, increase opportunities for young people. I saw earlier that the World Bank stated that by 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world are going to be African. 1/3 of all young people are going to be of African descent, and more than half of these young people are going to be women. So we need to make sure that they have access to free sexual and reproductive health commodities. This is another market. I know we talk about the different areas for opportunity, but I feel like health is a, you know, really big space for that. We need to have more investment in maternal health, water and sanitation, as we saw with the cholera outbreak, you know, improving information access, vaccine manufacturing, and reproductive health and rights. We need to invest in human capital of all Africans, and health is a great way to start. Thank you.
Yasmin?
Yes, thank you so much. So, as it was mentioned, Africa's population has the youngest demographic globally, and it's estimated by 2030, young Africans will constitute 42% of the global youth population. However, as of right now, there are over 70 million young Africans who are neither employed nor in education or in training, and 2/3 of them are women. Why is if we really want to talk about education, employment, we need to go to the root causes, the root barriers that do not allow young women and girls and young people within the African continent to access education. We have issues of gender-based violence, sexual gender-based violence, like the female genital mutilation, which we should be really alarmed by seeing the reversal in Gambia. We also have issues of child marriage. There's about 30% of girls that are married before 15 years old, and it's even higher in conflict and post-conflict countries. And this also brings back to the issue of what's going on in Sudan. It's been 1 year since the conflict have erupted. There's 6 million displaced people, half of them who are at high risk of gender-based violence. We've heard horrible reports of sexual violence, and women's bodies are being used as a weapon of war. So how can we talk about engaging in education? How can we talk about accessing employment when we're still facing those critical issues within our continent, whether it be child marriage, whether it be intimate partner violence? And again, those who are stepping up and who are serving their communities are young people that are at the forefront of all social justice efforts. Unfortunately, even when we get funding, it comes with so much bureaucracy, with so many restraints. Most of the funding comes from the global north, which means that it's very often seen as a white saviorism complex, which is not helpful either. And it comes with a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. And this is the same when it comes to employment. Why are you asking young people to have 5 years of experience for an entry-level position? Things needs to change in order for the processes to be youth-friendly and youth-inclusive. You cannot claim to be supporting young people when you have so many bureaucratic rules. And also, in order for us to really meaningfully engage with young people, then we need to engage with grassroots organizations that are at the forefront of these issues. Right now, we're also seeing how the climate crisis is disproportionately affecting young women and girls. When the earthquake struck Morocco, my home country, in September, we've seen how women's sexual reproductive rights were not included in the disaster response. And this is the case in most humanitarian crises. So we also need to have this gender lens and intersectional approach within everything that we undertake. Something that I really like that was mentioned is comprehensive sexuality education, gender transformative education. That's something that we need to invest in order to break from social norms, to break the taboos, in order for young people to really thrive and to be here for one another. And just to close that, women in Africa particularly are less likely to be entrepreneurs, and they face more disadvantage starting businesses. And that was even exacerbated with the COVID-19 pandemic, because they were most likely to lose their jobs. As you heard, many people, and particularly young women, are involved in the informal sector, and this harms them within many different ways. And that's why I really emphasize on the intersectional approach. Economic vulnerability, health impacts, disruption of education. So if really we want to have young people meaningfully engaged, then it has to go back to the root causes of such issues, and we need to really work together and focus on grassroots organizations. We don't need to empower young people; they are already powerful. We don't need to give them a voice; they already have.
Okay, she saw me. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I have this difficult job to manage the time. Sorry, I need now, before giving the floor again to my dear colleague Flip to close, I have to apologize. I'd like to ask if the participants, the permanent representatives here, other officials from member states, and UN officers, if they would like to take the floor. I for this time for you. 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. And I have to say that, allow me first to congratulate ASG on youth affairs and remind that Morocco was one of the fervent defender of the resolution 76/306, which was co-facilitated by Guyana and Egypt. So full support, and also seize the opportunity to thank Capo Verde and also Portugal, and initially I think Senegal from the continent, who fought for the youth resolution in the third committee. Much has been said. I cannot say more than what the USG OSAA said. She's one of the pillar architects and defender of the African affairs, African interests here. So, and many of the things that has been said here, but few things, getting into action. This has been repeated by many, and I'm taking notes here, including the ministers. So let us do something small or big and be proud of our actions, because actions speak louder. Let ourselves every day, ask ourselves every day, every week, what did I do today as youth? Because whether we like it or no, I'm part of the youth. I'm transitioning also, so some white hair. So what did I do today? What did I do this week for the community? So we need to ask ourselves, to improve the family, to improve the community. It starts like this, you know. And like the minister from Namibia said, we need to stop being frustrated. Negativity leads nowhere. We need to look for opportunities, and we're smart. We're having opportunities. This, you know, me, myself, now, it's not the same opportunities that I had 15, let's say 15 years ago. We need to look for those opportunities and to reflect on the aspirations of the African youth. And yes, the continent is getting younger, and this is by itself and de facto an opportunity. Let's not talk about, because I had a speech, but I'm not gonna, the 1.8 billion people in the world constitute 18%. These things, I will leave them for, I'm not gonna take much of the time, but let me just say that investing in accessible and quality education, including STEM education, this equips youth with the knowledge and skills. Investing in opportunities in terms of learning and training. You want to take those youth to the job market. What are the trainings? Do they have self-confidence? Because education is at home, but also self-improvements. Do I have the skills to empower myself, to speak in a power, to impose my ideas and to defend them also, but to listen also to the others and learn from the others as well. Gender-responsive policies. I personally, as Morocco, we're very, very, very defensive. We just had CSW, if you heard of that, and we defend, as Morocco, a lot gender-responsive policies now, because just gender-sensitive is over now. We need gender-responsive that respond to the need and the rights of women and girls, young women. Gender-responsive policies. The issue of the mindset, yes, it has been said. We have a mindset, unfortunately, completely occupied by pre-established ideas that, yes, maybe they were pertinent in certain historical context, but each minute we're speaking and thinking about that past, the mindset, it is a minute that is lost to think about a new idea, an opportunity. We need to open the door for new ideas. Of course, there are problems. We need to find solutions for those problems. Here, we're having an initiative. We're having the pioneers. We're having ourselves to share opportunities, to share ideas. Let me just say quickly one thing, which I found it very important while listening to the colleagues here, is the issue of trust. Yes, trust is very important. Trust between generations and trust among the youth themselves. Trust in the youth in the public sector, in the NGOs, in the private sector too. We need trust. We should not start a project as huge as this with the confrontational aspect. There is also the partnership. Partnership is very important. Kenneth, you talked longly about it. Partnerships to listen, to find solutions to the already done, problems that happen. So we need that.
Thank you so much, Morocco.
Just one thing: sexual and reproductive health. It has been mentioned. If a woman does not have or sexual reproductive health, it's an opportunity. It cannot be productive to the society. Morocco, a couple of weeks ago, had a big conference, African conference on sexual reproductive health and rights. We're proud of to also take the lead on this issue here, at least at the UN and also on the ground. So we're happy with that. Many things to say, but I can send them.
Thank you so much. Thank you
by
so
email.
much. Yes, please. It's phenomenal. Thank you so much for the contribution. I'm just going to go into the order because I know we've got a lot of questions, but we're very limited with time. So I will try to get to everybody. I would like to invite our honorable distinguished delegate from Sierra Leone to give the next address, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just literally 2 minutes. Apologies.
Yes, of course. I'll try to be quick. My name is Desmond Pessima. I advise the president of Sierra Leone on youth affairs. And I want to say congratulations to you, Christina, for the job you're doing. A lot has been said here today, and it is important for us Africans to start taking responsibility, for the things that we want to see or the way we want the Europeans or the Americans to treat us. For example, the Sierra Leone model on education, the president has ensured that he's dedicated 22% of our national budget on education. His focus is to empower the next generation of leaders. And what he has also done is to make sure we are talking about STEM and also policies that are gender deliberate. He has made sure that any lady or any woman who is studying STEM at university level, we do those at the cost, of no cost to them. The government takes responsibility of that. Because we're all talking about unemployment, how it is difficult to access resources. Well, African leaders, We have to start taking responsibility to provide those resources for our people. And of course, there are so many challenges, social challenges, in Africa as well as in the world. For example, we talk about unemployment, and our young lady there has provided very, very good models as to how to overcome those and to include women in entrepreneurship and business ventures. It's very, very important. But we also have some other youths who are outside of the education circle, who are, it's difficult for them to access formal education right now because of their age, and they cannot go back to primary school or secondary schools. What do we do for those youths? Some of them are taken into drugs. Some of them are taken into violence. Some of them are taken into crime. So it is important for us as African youth to really, really hold our government responsible to make policies in place that will address those issues internally. And we as Africans, we have to see ourselves as one. We have to be united. We have to speak with one voice. We cannot be speaking from the different sides of our mouths in the room, and we expect the Europeans and the Americans to respect us. We have to stand as a united continent, as we have the United States of America. That is how they will begin to respect us. We talked about visa for African, country. It's important because that is our continent. In America, once you have your passport, you have your ID card, you travel anywhere in America, within the United States of America. What is wrong with us Africans? So it is important that we are having these conversations. It is important that we are talking about it. And I want to ask you, Christine, that, we extend this, to our member states. Let's have, this particular network in our member states. Let's try to establish some home offices and see how best we can collaborate these African voices in our member states. I want to say thank you again for the opportunity. I'm Desmond Pesima, Presidential Advisor on Youth Sierra Leone.
Thank you so much, Sierra Leone. Some excellent comments. Thank you very much. I would just like to ask any other member state officials that might be able to give some contributions. Otherwise, I have two contributions from African youth in the room. There's one over that side and another one that side. Oh, yes, of course. Rado, please.
Sorry, just a logistical announcement. With many thanks for their support, I just wanted to mention that interpretation services will end at 12:10. We thank them for their support since the start of this meeting, so I just wanted to mention that. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Yes, now back to see if there's any other official permanent member state representatives that might want to give their contribution. Otherwise, I'll hand over to the Eritrea, please. And I'll come to the youth in a minute.
Well, I'm a listener more, and I think Christina knows that. I want to say thank you for having this forum, and thank you for inviting us to listen to the youth voices. And last week we addressed a bunch of youth here from Europe, from 1,000 students or something. And I asked them then, where are the Africans? Why are you not in the room? Why are the Africans not represented? So I'm happy to see African voices being represented here, and look forward to working with each one of you in your countries as we elevate and amplify your voices. And I'm a proponent of African youth, and the work that they've been doing for the last 20 years has been with African youth before coming to the UN here. So this is my home. Happy to be around the youth, and you bring new voices, you bring passion, you bring hope. Yes. Yeah. And that's cool.
100%. Lots of hope and lots of opportunities. The young lady over there has been waiting very, very patiently for the African youth. Please go ahead.
I'm a youth leader under the UNICEF Youth Leadership Network. It's an honor to be here. And first of all, I want to express my surprise that no Nigerian is a panelist. Nigeria has the highest number of global citizens on the continent and the highest number of youths on the continent. I believe we deserve a seat at the table. My point is the first SDG is no poverty. which is an epicenter to achieving other goals. But how does this affect us as youths? Youths cannot be loud voices if our stomach lack food and if our brains lack knowledge. From acquisition to financing, utilization, and implementation strategies, youths have low causative impact to this, but we can change the tides, I believe. However, youths are the realest group of people you can meet. They speak the truth to power, and that's what we need. Not sugarcoating in this time of one world crisis, affecting our socioeconomic well-being in and outside the continent. Youths are not the founders, not the foundation of world problems, and I believe we are the best to push solutions with no biases. Youths in and outside these rooms are speaking. Nigeria cannot do it alone, neither can Comoros. Collaborations across borders is the strongest step to making the dream work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Before I take the next youth voice, just to highlight and emphasize, yes, every country will certainly be represented as we move ahead. This is just the start, which makes it very, very exciting. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that we have the digital world where we can continue to get those voices and input even through digital platforms, which we'll follow through with the team here. The gentleman over there has been waiting, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philemon Shikomba. I'm an international human rights lawyer from Namibia. I have a question for Madame Christina. Ma'am, we are speaking about amplifying African youth voices. And in most cases, African youth are at the center of uprisings and pushing, conversation, very difficult conversation, but often young people, they face victimization and also political suppression. So we cannot talk about youth voices without protecting and guarding voices of reason. So I want to know, what are you doing to ensure that the voices that are speaking on human rights in Uganda, the voices that are speaking on corruption, are protected? Thank you.
So I'll let Madam answer just after I take everybody else's comments. The lady over here, I know you've been waiting.
Thank you. So my name is Liziana Emakoa, and I'm from Cameroon. And I advocate for the institutional mechanism, that places young people at the heart of UN processes. So I would first like to commend the efforts of the OSAA for your leadership and for the coordination of the African Youth Voices Launch. Here today, we talked about several challenges that young people face in policy making, including limited access to multilateral decision-making spaces, the lack of resources, and supportive initiatives at the grassroots level. Additionally, there's a perception gap where our voices and perspectives are not always taken seriously by policymakers, despite our unique insights and experiences. So overcoming these challenges requires concerted efforts to create supportive environments that value and prioritize our participation in policy development and in the implementation at the UN and other global spaces. And it also requires the implementation of policies at both the national and international levels that mandate the inclusion of young people in decision-making processes. We've realized that not every member state has started that implementation at the policy level, and also the promotion of transparent and accountable government structures, ensuring that young people have access to information and mechanisms holding policies makers accountable, to their actions. And last but not least, we also mentioned the implementation of AI in the continent and the opportunities that it can create, such as increased access to quality education. But first we need to consider and address the challenges, such as network connectivity, insufficient infrastructure, and more, in the continent, and also ensure that AI is not a threat to the jobs of the young people in the continent, and it doesn't, eliminate the jobs, for young people. So that's about it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, unfortunately, I'm sure those of us in the room will have a bit more discussion afterwards. I'd like to hand over to Her Excellency to answer that question, and then we will look to wrap up and close because we're limited to time. Yes.
Very quickly, thank you for your question. I would like to respond in a very short way. First, I hope that everybody in this room recognizes that the UN system is the louder voice in the world in terms of human rights. I hope you recognize that. We have reports, regional, country-level reports, that put it all and said it all in terms of human rights violation. And as a multilateral system, we have been for decades and decades a loudly voice on this. Second, as in my office, just a coincidence, we are about to write, and I hope to finalize, a report on cause of conflict in Africa, and the 2024 report mentions exactly how the dysfunctionalities around the rule of the law system in Africa, in some countries, has been feeding instability and conflict. Third, we reach a stage that we Africans, we need to be the first to talk about our own problems and not to wait for third parties outside the continent to point us the finger. That was my strategy when I was Minister of Finance with IMF. Before the IMF tells me all the mistakes, I take the floor and I inform the IMF what we have done and what we have not done, and what are the solutions for what we have not done. So I think that we need to reach a stage that we need to talk in a very open and frank way about our own problem. Our democratic systems are young and weak. Why? Because Africa faces, at the end of the day, a challenge of absence of the state. What it means? State has not occupied the whole territory of a nation in terms of providing social service, public goods. So we do face a huge challenge in terms of absence of the state. So on top of this reality of nations, countries, that face this huge challenge of dealing with absence of the state, we put on top of that imported Western democracies. And sometimes not paying attention to our traditional democratic systems that exist in Africa. So all these dysfunctionalities result of you just mentioned. My last say on this. I do believe that it's up to the African civil societies to fight for their own space in the political arenas. When you ask me what I'm doing, can I be provocative?
Of course.
Do you allow me?
Yes.
When you ask me what I'm doing for an African problem, I see a mindset that is looking for solutions outside Africa. Solutions is not here in the UN system. The solution is in your side in Africa. This is where is the solution. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cristina, for this reflection and this call, I think, for all of us. And I think in our own reality, I think we should always be thinking about how we are, each of us, doing something to change this complex reality and painful reality we are facing at the global level. So thank you, Michelle, for your amazing moderation. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, the discussants, for your comments. On my side, as head of the United Nations Youth Office, I would like to say that we are committed to continuing the ongoing collaboration with the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, and we are open and very kind to continue in how we can support the operationalization of the Africa's Youth Voices Network that today has been launched. And finally, I want to get back to some of the reflections that two of the ministers made at the beginning, and they were mentioning about a whole series of discussions and negotiations that are going to be taking place in this whole 2024. This is called the Summit of the Future. And this may seem as a very far discussion for a lot of us, or for a lot of you, about something happening in the headquarters of the United Nations in New York. But the possibilities of having concrete changes on multilateralism and concrete commitments from governments on some transformations that multilateralism need could be crucial for the years to come. So we live in a more global world than ever, and specifically with the largest young generation ever. Not only in the regional, that of course, and you made some reflections about the numbers and what Africa represents when we are talking about the youth agenda. But globally, 50% of the population is under 30 years old. So in a world that needs more than ever a strong multilateralism system, the possibilities and the opportunities of the negotiations that are taking part during this year into the summits of the future are a unique opportunity to act, to strengthen solidarity, and to put young people at the center of the discussions. So for that, and reflecting also on what the USG was bringing into the conversation, I highly encourage you to engage on your capacity also on this process, to engage with the UN in your communities, in your country, to engage with your governments at the national, at the regional, and at the local, to engage with your communities. And on our side, we're going to push and to support in our capacity the negotiations taking place so we can put youth at the center, because it's crucial. If we want to bring trust into this multilateral system, we need also some transformations that create the platforms for a meaningfully engagement, not only of young people, of citizens in general, but especially of young people. And creating these possibilities is really a smart decision to take. Creating this mechanism is, of course, based on a human right to participate, but it's also to be more effective when addressing the issues, and it's also to bring this 50% of the population closer to the decisions so that they feel part and they trust in the decisions that are taken. So thank you once again, and I hope that this is the first of a series of conversations and opportunities to collaborate together. Thank you.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to close off the session. It's been a real pleasure, a real honor. Everybody online, thank you for joining us. Everybody in the room, thank you for being with us. I leave you with just a very simple line that I tell my team all the time. You can, you will, and you absolutely already have. So let's go change Africa for the future. And we have networking and snacks just outside, everybody. Thank you.